Hey, welcome to the Rude Dog Show. Good afternoon. I am your host, Rudy Reyes. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. This is a podcast edition of the Rude Dog Show, and may merely suggest to go to the newly redesigned RudeDogShow.com webpage and pick what works for you in the way of a downloadable app. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. I am also Facebook Live, so feel free to make your inquiries there if you have any questions in regards to what we're covering today. Bears, Lions, Steelers, Browns, and Falcons. And I could say, oh my, but it doesn't quite work out that well. Anyway, welcome to the show. And you can always call into the Gen Service Hotline, 216-539-9967. I'll take your calls, but they will not be live. This is a podcast. Be part of it, take part of it, make sure you call in. I'm going to open up this discussion, and I hate to call them the winners of the runner-up trophy because that's just not fair. Everybody remembers number one, nobody remembers number two, so the team that we're going to open up with, and when I say we, it's not just me, myself, and I. Of course, you could probably put that to a song and make lyrics out of it, but to help bring in and enter the NFL kickoff show here on the Rude Dog Show is the managing editor for Cover 32, covering the Falcons, is Patrick Hatten. Thanks for joining me this afternoon.
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks a lot for covering the very first kickoff show here on the Rude Dog Show. And there's a couple questions I have. We're talking about Matt Ryan. We're talking about where he ended up off last year in the defeat against the New England Patriots. Of course, Patriots went on to win Super Bowl 51. When we talk about Matt Ryan, I look at his fluidity in the pocket. I look what he did. Absolutely outstanding numbers, NFL MVP conversation, a lot of things to be considered based on what he did during the regular season. Went on a tirade, just really shredded up defenses with the likes of Julio Jones and spreading across the backfield. The running he was working with a two-headed monster, it was on point. But the biggest question I have surrounding Matt Ryan is, does he have the mental fortitude? I know he has a playmaking capability, that's not in question. He has a mentality, that's also not the question. But will Matt Ryan be able to get back to glory and another Super Bowl run? And if so, what would be the likelihood that Matt Ryan can get it done this time?
I had these same questions following their NFC Championship loss to the Seahawks, the 49ers back in 2012. And I didn't think he'd be able. I thought that was the end of him being an elite quarterback. But he surprised me. He's been able to turn it around, come back already from a downturn. With Dan Quinn. I mean, I think that Matt Ryan has the mental fortitude to continue being a elite quarterback for a very long time. I mean, the man's only, I think he just turned 32, 33. He's still very young. He just became, he had won his first MVP last year, like you said. I think, when it comes back down to it, this team is loaded. He has tons of offensive firepower. Julio Jones is hands down the most. He's the biggest weapon. He's the best weapon that anyone can have in football right now. There's no one else who can touch him. And Matt Ryan has him in his pocket. I think Matt Ryan has as good a chance of getting back to the Super Bowl as any quarterback in the NFL.
I think he can. I believe when you look at Matt Ryan, I believe in all fairness, last year I was, there's no way. If Matt Ryan does not have a great year behind that offensive line, behind the weapons, and the two-headed monster with Freeman and you have Julio Jones in the flat, there's no way. If you cannot make completions to those guys, you're not going to have a chance to win in the NFL. It's ultimately would be for him a not for long situation. Fortunately enough for them, he switched gears at a complete 360 and said, you know what, I need to do this. I have to do this. I'm not getting any younger. And I had a chance to look at the NFC Championship ring for them. And I looked at the ring and I said, man, I can't wear this. Is that Lou?
Hello? Yes.
Lou, what do you know? Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging in. Patrick Hatten from Cover 32 is on. We're talking Falcons. And Lou, I have to ask you, when you look at Super Bowl last year, what did the Falcons do you think, that they didn't exhibit in the second half that they really dominated in the first?
Well, with defense, I mean, they had all the defense, and it's like the Patriots just fell asleep in that first half. I mean, Falcons are doing everything right, and Patriots doing everything all wrong, but something happened in the second half. I mean, they just dropped out. They let their defense down, and New England just took advantage of it. Everything they had going right in the first half went wrong in the second half. Collapsed and died.
Patrick, we're talking about offensive weaponry, and we were talking about Julio Jones, and I'll be honest with you, when you said Julio Jones is by far the best wide receiver out there, I think there's at least one or two other guys that probably would tend to disagree with that, one of those being Antonio Brown, of course. Steelers part of the discussion here on the Rude Dog Show. But when we talk about Julio Jones, his durability, never in question. His ability to catch the ball, never in question. The only question that I have for everybody out there listening, you statisticians that are really trying to get into the meat and potatoes of where Julio Jones actually ranks, where do you see Julio Jones ranking, and where do you see him ranking all time against wide receivers in the last decade?
I think even if you look at his all time, he's top of the top 5 receivers in receiving yards per game all time. Julio Jones is number 1. I mean, he's beating out Calvin Johnson, Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham. His grades just keep getting better and better. According to Pro Football Focus, his first 6 seasons. I mean, Randy Moss was a beast, but I think Julio Jones may be a tier just below that. But we're talking about all-time receiving, in my mind. So
I think Julio Jones ranks.
Guys are really good, but not.
Yeah.
I think he has the speed power combo that just is unrivaled.
I think Julio Jones, because of how much of an athlete, a freak athlete that he is, I think he gets overshadowed by a lot of the antics by other wide receivers. You mentioned Odell Beckham, still looking for a brand new deal there in the Giants system. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Le'Veon Bell and his holdout currently, and that's got a lot of people's feathers ruffled. But no more ruffled than coming up number 2, owning a ring that they'll probably never wear. I'm sure maybe when they retire, when they get older, maybe they want to pass it off to their grandchildren or what have you. But when you look at the addition of a solid pass rusher, Takk McKinley, I look at his style, his swim move, his athleticism, his burst off of the line. Will that be enough to create an even better pass rush than they had last year?
I don't know. I mean, I like to think that they will. This defense is definitely built. I think you probably could hit them running the ball a lot and wear them down. Kind of what the Patriots did. I don't like what their caller earlier said. People don't realize that the Patriots had almost 90 plays in that game of offense. So it's like what they did was they wore down the speed of the Falcons, and they neutralized the speed, and they were able to overcome the Falcons' biggest strength. If the Falcons can get a big lead and hold it and not allow people to wear them down over 3 quarters, I think that speed can become a major asset for them. And I think, especially with McKinley's speed, he can become a difference maker opposite Vic Beasley.
I like the addition of Takk McKinley. The fact that Takk McKinley was able to get it done in the NCAA, and it's really hard to tell. I mean, look, the NCAA level, and I've had this conversation many times here on the show, that level is not the NFL level. It's a completely different monster altogether. Look at the NFL. You have 350-pound, offensive tackles. You have guards that somewhere weighing 350. And these guys are huge. They're big for a reason because he can't be pushed around. Will Tack McKinley be able to get the burst that he needs in order to make the impact right next to Vic Beasley on that same Falcons front?
I think he will. He's not going to be a good first or second down guy. He's not going to be able to stand up against the run very much. But that's not really why they brought him in. He is going to have Terry Poe he's a pickup from Kansas City in the offseason. He's a big 340-pound monster next to him. He might be able to take some of that pressure off of him and allow him to just go one-on-one against the tackle, or maybe do a stunt or a spin move and use his speed on third downs to really make quarterbacks' lives difficult.
Hopefully that's the case for the Falcons because, again, just as Lou had alluded to when you look at the second half, I don't think it was about what the Patriots were trying to do. Yes, they made some alterations, but it wasn't really noticed. They put a lot more play action. They put some deception behind an offensive backfield. They got LeGarrette Blount involved in the process as well. A very different looking Patriots team only because of what the Falcons are doing in the first half of the game. And I think that the Falcons went away and deviated from what they were normally doing, allowing the Patriots to really dictate the tempo defensively as well as offensively, and for some reason the Falcons just lost their edge. I'm sure Mike Smith has a lot of harsh feelings in regards to what happened last year. But as any professional, you have to be able to wipe the slate clean, move away from what happened last year, and focus on the year at hand. Go to SeatGiant.com. Make sure you hashtag Get the Experience, download the app. And if you use the code RootDog, by the end of your purchase, you'll be able to get something off of your transactions. You can there's venues everywhere around here in the Southern California area, from the Hollywood Bowl to Staples Center, everywhere. So make sure you get this. I want to go a little backwards, at least in the States, geographically anyway. I want to talk about the Bears, and of course there was a interesting note about Jordan Howard being a future back for the Bears, and of course Howard is looking to make an impact, literally and figuratively, transitioning from just being a one-year option back to being top of the league running back, and I know he has a lot of room to grow, especially being just the option back from last year. But what's really interesting about it is that when you consider the offensive line, hasn't exactly been stellar for a running situation with the myriad of quarterbacks for the Chicago Bears, at least last season, sharing the field. And he was quoted at Stadium definitely trying to be the number one rusher in the league. This year, Howard had mentioned in the Chicago Tribune on Wednesday. Now, here's a little side note here. Most people don't know this unless you're a statistician, and recognize that after a few months finishing 300 yards behind Ezekiel Elliott, and I mean just 300 yards short, that's really not a whole lot when you think about it. It's maybe a couple of games, maybe a few games, depending on what he was able to give you from behind the line. But ultimately, Ezekiel Elliott finished acquiring the rushing title in 2016. Now, this year, Howard has a legitimate chance. And I look at his chance, and the Bears collectively could be top 10 offensive line, maybe with the acquisitions in the draft, some free agency moves, but I think it's an uncertain situation and can lend itself to more handoffs, and I really see that happening. Biggest question is, when I look at this Bears team, I look at how abysmally they played last year. Patrick, does Howard have the looks of being able to be the top 3, top 4 rusher in the NFL this season?
I think he could, but there's just so many variables based on the quarterback play. The Falcons actually open up with the Bears, so I've been writing a piece on the Bears in that matchup. And I don't know, with the uncertainty at quarterback, they don't have Jeffries anymore. I just feel like there's going to be, he doesn't have Dallas's offensive line. The Bears are going to have a good offensive line, but not like Ezekiel Elliott's offensive line. And so there's definitely some chance that he could. He's a really good running back. I probably don't see him getting to the top 5 this year, just because of uncertainty in the passing game. People are going to load up the box. I just don't see it materializing for him.
Well, look, when you look at Chicago, they were 25th in rushing attempts, so that's not very good. 17 rushing yards, that's middle of the road, if that. 22nd rushing touchdown, which is still not very good. Because of that offensive line, allowed a lot of sacks, a lot of pressures, and I think they were overmatched in a lot of games, and I think they'll be overmatched in the season opener against the Atlanta Falcons. But when you look at Howard, and one thing that people don't know about him is that he was more impressive in that he completed more game. So it's not as if there was this huge disparaging gap between them. And by the time Howard caught fire, he started getting significant touches around October. And I look at the Bears' offense, which is obviously a non-running back friendly offense, to kind of switch gears. And you had mentioned quarterback play. How many times did you see Jay Cutler out there? And the good Jay Cutler showed up, and then the bad Jay Cutler showed up in the same exact game. From one snap to the next, you never know what you're going to get. And currently, I believe he's still looking for a home. No, matter of fact, he retired. He's now working for Fox, I believe. But when you look at the Bears, and I look at the offensive coordination between Dow Logans, in all fairness, there is a roadmap to be able to create more rush per attempts if you put play action together, or maybe even establish a run option with a 2-back set. I don't know what they're going to use, and I don't even know what quarterback is going to be starting for them in the regular season. Right now, training camps are, because today's the last day of mini camp, I think one or two more teams have one more day of mini camp. But when I look at mini camp overall, I think to myself, okay, well, it's mini camp, it's not training camp. When you look at the Bears going into this season, do you see them using more play action? Obviously, quarterback play has a lot to do with who gets the ball, when they get the ball, and do they have a run option? What quarterback do you foresee the Bears actually having? And if it's who I think it is, does he become a lot more of a viable threat getting the starting role?
Right. I think Trubisky was a heck of a pickup. I would have picked up the first round, maybe not, number 2. I think Lennon probably starts the year off. So I think that's who the Falcons are going to be seeing week 1. And team would be smart to utilize a lot of play action, considering there's a lot of uncertainty at the receiver position, and then take advantage of Jordan's rushing ability, and teams zeroing in on him. Trubisky, he's going by mid-year, he will be the starter. I would put money on, and he might even be. I wouldn't even rule out a trade before the season, honestly, to get Glennon out. But I just don't know. They're hinting about. John Fox is hinting about putting in a package for Trubisky week 1, similar to what they ran in Denver with Tim Tebow. But I just definitely would be smart to throw in more play action and utilize the strengths of that team.
And again, because everything right now is up in the air, from the quarterback position to the creativity they're going to use offensively by the Bears. Defensively, they weren't very good on the other side of the ball. But I think they'd be wise to use some trickery and to really get down the play action, to be able to give, you have the run option. If everything's going to the left, get the option guy to the right-hand side. Be the one who may not get covered. And if it's blown coverage, they may be able to capitalize on that opportunity on any given play. That's what I see the Bears needing to do. Biggest question is that quarterback will dictate whether or not he will take it back based on who the quarterback is under center. Tyler Demmett chimed in. Mike Glennon should be the starter. Chicago Glennon, it comes in slightly above average and starter at worst. Now, let's talk about Mike Glennon for a minute. I liked Mike Glennon's play when he was with Tampa Bay. He showed signs of life. I don't believe he was given more of a fair opportunity, obviously, in their first overall draft pick. But at times, Glennon has not done very good in passing lanes. You know, his targeting hasn't been on the right-hand side. It was more in the middle. He did have some downfield, chucks at 30-plus yards or more. But I look at Mike Glennon, and he's had a lot more time in than obviously Trubisky. Well, I don't agree with that pick, as you had previously mentioned. Tyler, thanks for the question. That's good stuff. But Glennon could be the slightly above average. I agree with you, Tyler, on that aspect. But in all fairness, I look at this team and I think to myself, the only way Howard himself is going to be solid is based on the quarterback, the guy under center. And there should be some significant pressure released by the Bears if they get the guy in the right position. I don't know that Mike Glennon has that ability to do that. We're certainly going to find out. And you're right, he had a good rookie season, Tyler. Then clearly he dropped off, and of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneers never been known to be the perennial team, only when he won Super Bowl. But obviously Jay Gruden and all of that was a huge difference. But bottom line is this: in Chicagoland, the Bears fans need to send out a hashtag on Twitter during training camp. Hashtag set Howard free. I think something could be said for that if you could do it. But the biggest question, whether or not Howard, behind the line that he's going to be playing in Chicago, will have the ability to beat Ezekiel Elliott for a running title. That remains to be seen, but if they can execute it, it could be a solid plan moving forward.
I would stick with, if it were me running the team, I would stick with Glennon for the year. Let Trubisky learn. Before you give him the reins, kind of like Favre and Rodgers. I think Trubisky is a super talented guy, but you've got to just give him a second. I mean, I live in Jacksonville. I've been around a lot of quarterbacks who probably weren't very good, but they gave him the reins as soon as they gained one or two of the rookie year, and they fizzled out. Blaine Gabbert, not great. There are a lot of guys like that. So I definitely believe in sitting your rookie, letting him mature a little bit.
I happen to agree with that because maturity plays into a lot of factors. How you play the game, what you mentally bring to each individual game, the camaraderie, the flow, the feel, all of those things. Those are the intangible aspects to being a solid quarterback. Some didn't quite make it, some did. Tyler Boyd from Clemson reminds me of a guy who didn't quite flourish. He was someone the Steelers had pulled in, and when you look at what he did, it was misreads, they didn't quite mesh with the Steelers, and so they ended up cutting him. But I have to take a quick break. I will be right back. This is Rudy Reyes on the Root Dog Show, a podcast edition of an NFL kickoff show. I will be right back.
What's up, what it do? This is Rudy Dreadhead here on WBOZ Sports. The NFL, you want to talk about the NHL or the MLB? I see all of y'all. Meet me in the Lions Den at 9 a.m. here on WBOZ Sports page on Facebook. Catch me at 9 a.m. Be there. Or are you scared to enter the Lions Den because you might not make it out? Well, I'm going to make it out every time because I'm part of WBOZ Sports where we got balls.
With over 30 years of experience, the smart people call on Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. Interior, exterior, commercial, or residential, Doug Peffer does it all. Is your house looking ugly? Then call on Doug. Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing, 404-966-3361. Mention WBLZ Sports, and you'll receive a special We've Got Balls discount. That's Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing, 404-966-3361. Hey, wrestling fans, Gary Grider here, letting you know that the Eye of Wrestling podcast comes your way every Friday at 7 p.m. right here on the WBLZ Sports Network. Join me and Martin Hughes as we get you caught up on all the wrestling news and discuss pro wrestling from the classics of yesterday to today. That's the Eye of Wrestling podcast every Friday at 7 p.m. right here on WBLZ Sports, where we've got the balls.
My name is Paul Heyman. And I am the advocate for the most non-PG ass kicker of the PG era.
WBLZ Sports. We've got balls. Whether it be your industrial, commercial, or residential needs, Gen Service is the electrical contractor for you. The Gen Service team has the expertise, commitment, and educational years to help you solve all your electrical concerns. They have you in their best interest with helpful suggestions to accommodate your every want. Give them a call, no matter the size of the job, at 740-438-7173. Mention WBLZ Sports and you'll get a discount. That's Gen Service, 740-438-7173.
Welcome back to the Rudy Show. This is Rudy Reyes. Good afternoon, everybody. I still have a very special guest covering the Atlanta Falcons at Cover 32, Patrick Hatten. He's the managing editor for Cover 32, covers the Falcons explicitly. Let's kind of move forward here. I look at a situation that's actually developing, and I'd hate to suggest that in the Steel City, there are more issues than there are answers. And, of course, I'm talking about the situation with Le'Veon Bell, who has a lack of signing his franchise tag at well over $12.1 million worth of a tag. And, of course, if I was a betting man, I would probably suggest if you're listening, Le'Veon, I would probably sign it. Now, in all honesty, if he doesn't sign it, this could end up being something huge that would spill over right into the Steelers' locker room, and I don't foresee that being a very good thing at all. Why? Because there are a lot of players that were released. Brown Dukes was released. They didn't feel they needed D'Angelo Williams any longer, so they relieved him of his services, believing and feeling that Le'Veon Bell was going to be the answer there in Pittsburgh and be ready for the 2017 regular season. The problem is that he has yet to sign it, and I'm really concerned alone. Now, yes, I am a fan, but I'm more concerned about what this will do to the Steelers overall if for some reason he doesn't get a chance, which he's had every opportunity, obviously, to go visit the facility and sign his franchise tag. But I look at this being a huge issue with the Steelers from a morale standpoint. And once it gets into the locker room, it can spill over. Don't forget, Le'Veon Bell only had one full 16-game season where he had, he had done, absolutely everything. He had averaged almost 32 touches per game, and obviously had a groin injury he was battling through. Of course, the loss against the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and I look at Le'Veon Bell and I think to myself, look, the guy's 25 years old. He's just played in 18 full regular season games, and some of that was due to injury, some of that was due to a 4-game, then turned over to a 3-game suspension. Patrick, I look at the Steelers and I look at Le'Veon Bell and the fact that he has not signed a franchise tag. I guess the biggest question is this: will he sign it, and if so, when?
I think he's gonna hold out at least till this mid training camp, and honestly, I think he's probably smart to do so. I mean, he only played in 12 games, regular season games last year, and he had over 1,200 rushing yards. I mean, the guy produces, and he knows what he's worth, and he knows that he probably wants to get a contract. Now's the time, if you're running back, to get a contract, age 25, because usually most running backs, as a rule, drop off at 28. So now's the time for him to make his money. And if I were him, I think the smart thing to do is to hold out until he gets a longer-term deal. As far as the Steelers go, I can see being a little worried, but they were able to to get through the first few games with him without him last year. They have a really good receiving core, and Ben and James Conner is going to surprise a lot of people, I think. He's not the same kind of running back as Le'Veon, but he's still going to do some things, and I think he's going to be able to spell him enough to get them through until he does eventually re-sign.
Well, look, Le'Veon Bell hasn't exactly went about things the right way. I mean, he cost his team 4 games initially, 3 game suspension overall, was not there to build the chemistry, picked up as the season went on. You see record-setting numbers against Buffalo. In the snow, in Buffalo, and things on the field, he can be better. But here's the problem with him holding out with that contract extension looming over his head. The Steelers have never predominantly, in my years of doing this, have never overpaid any running back because of the short lifespan, because of the injuries, because of the issues, because of the situations surrounding guys who are younger that aren't playing with, and I'm not going to say a full deck, but they're not playing to play for the team. They're playing for themselves individually. Le'Veon Bell is a team guy. He is a team player. But because he's holding out, makes it and shifts the spotlight over to being about him and only about him. And I don't agree that should be the case. Will the Steelers end up signing to a longer-term deal? Maybe. I don't foresee them forking out the $12 million that he wants. You have only one other guy in the NFL making $8 million of the running back position. And I don't foresee the Steelers giving him X amount of dollars to offset that to make him the highest paid running back in the NFL because of those issues. That's one of the reasons why they went and acquired James Conner, to make sure that James Conner got the reps out of minicamp, no issues other than our next guy we're going to talk about in a moment. But goes to minicamp without any issues, heads into training camp completely healthy, a story unto himself, beating cancer and surviving that, being able to get into the NFL, of course being picked by his hometown team, of course. But I think that when there's a conversation that was had with Todd Haley, and I read this online, it said that his knee, groin, and hamstring are fluke-type injuries. But my theory is this. Look, injuries are injuries. I don't care if they're flukes. I don't care if someone did it intentionally. It's still an injury. It still applies to your athleticism, your ability to be on the field and be effective. One of the things that hampered Le'Veon Bell. Now, in all fairness, when you look at stuff like hamstrings and what have you, anybody could have a hamstring pull. Come on. You don't get hydrated. You don't hydrate yourself enough. You don't take care of your body. Even hamstrings could be considered an anomaly. But Patrick, when I look at the overall situation for the Steelers, do they end up giving him money? And do you think it's somewhere in the $3 or $4 billion range for 2 years, or are they just going to work things without him in Pittsburgh?
I think he's more likely to settle for just get by the 1 year and then revisit it next season. And so he's just going to probably hold out or push off as long as he can, just to see if he can try to use whatever leverage he has. But I mean, you're right. I mean, he does have potential injury issues. He has an injury past. He does have some league suspensions. It's just not, the chances of him getting that long-term extension probably a lot lower than he might realize. I think he probably will just settle for the 1 year. I don't think he'll push out too long. But you just never. I mean, you never know. But at least they have the insurance of James Conner, and I think that he's definitely a back that they can depend on if Le'Veon doesn't come back. Which I think you're going to see him in black and gold this year. Especially at the start.
He's not a Hall of Fame running back because he's not, at least not yet. And the only way he can cement that is by being in whatever uniform and not pulling Adrian Peterson type of holdout, who's now with the New Orleans Saints, and we're going to have some Saints talk this week on the Rude Dog Show. But I look at James Conner. I think that you're going to have a lot more opportunities to get guys involved if for some reason Le'Veon Bell does not come back because of James Conner. Of course, it's hard to imagine not having Le'Veon Bell. I mean, in all fairness, to think about the season not having Le'Veon Bell without, anything at all. I mean, he skipped minicamp. He skipped minicamp because he wasn't getting a long-term deal, and on top of that, the fact that he was healing from the groin surgery, well, that remains to be seen, but we're going to find out how that unfolds. Anyway, minicamp is over, at least over for the majority of the 2017 NFL teams that are out there. But one particular draft pick in Myles Garrett, it was premature. He had left the field due to a left foot injury, and however, his no-show for the last day of minicamp didn't mean he left the building. He was still there hanging out with the Browns system. And, of course, Garrett reportedly was still at the Browns complex. That was per Mary Kay Cabot of the Plain Dealer. And clearly he had limped the field under his own power. Wednesday, he didn't have anybody enabling him to get off the field. And Tyler, to answer your question, we're going to go through an AFC North preview within the next week. So hang in for that. We're going to talk about that as well. So the Browns don't yet have any more information on the injury, but Browns head coach Hugh Jackson said that it was a good sign to see him lead the field on his own omittance. But when you look at the mountain of defensive, ends, he doesn't come any less than stellar. And the fact that the Browns needed him and need him now and need him moving forward is huge for the Browns. And, of course, right now, unsure what's going on. I mean, don't forget, in Texas A&M, his latter season year, he left with a high ankle sprain. So it kind of spilled over to OTAs. He hasn't seen a lot of work there. But do you foresee, based on information that will develop, obviously, for Myles Garrett, do you foresee him coming back and joining training camp, or do you see this as more of a long-term situation with Myles Garrett and the Browns?
I would be careful with him because they need to make sure that he's healthy for the year. They don't have a ton of depth along that line. He's pretty much what they have to go with. So I would play hands off and then get him work, starting back up during training camp, and hopefully this isn't worse than we know what it is. I know that. Again, I live in Jacksonville, so, a couple years ago they drafted a defensive end themselves, Dante Fowler Jr., who, went through, I think it was the first snap for OTAs and tore his ACL. So it can definitely sidetrack a guy. And he hasn't been the same since. So it can definitely sidetrack a guy, and so they just better hope that it's not a bigger issue than what we realize.
I hope not. I really hope not. But as long as the word stands right now is that for the Browns franchise moving forward from a pass rushing perspective, which they haven't really had a whole lot of in recent memory. And then last but not least, of course, I have 10 minutes left here on the podcast. We're talking about the Detroit Lions making a very strange move and deal with the LA Rams and acquiring Greg Robinson and obviously a 2014 draft pick in Sirius Quandijo, a second-round pick in 2014, drafted by the Bills in 2017. He did have an injury that signed on him in his ankle. He had a hip injury at home, but to his credit, he wanted to play 12 games and 5 starts in 2016. And, of course, something that Detroit does not do with free agent acquisition, more importantly, what they announced today by grabbing these two guys. And what's even more interesting than that, when you look at Taylor Decker, a very long-time guy in the left tackle position for the Lions, in order to make room, they had to cut Jimmy Landis and Arturo Uzdavinas off of the roster and cut them completely in order to make room for these two guys. Taylor Decker had a torn labrum in his right shoulder the entire year last year, had just recently received surgery for that torn labrum, probably out till December. But when you look at the Lions, you look at these two positions, obviously more NFC than AFC, but overall, but when you look at these positions, do you think it was the right move acquiring both of these guys to fill those voids to give Matthew Stafford more time under center?
I think that, they've had a lot of good press about the potential of their offensive line. during the early part of the off season. So I think this definitely is a sign that maybe that injury is a little bit more than we realize with Decker. So I think, and then also like Robinson, he may not be a long-term guy at left tackle. So if Decker is healthy, you can always plug him in, and maybe he'll be a better fit at right tackle or one of the guard positions, and you still are taking a gamble on a guy who went number 1 overall. So it's definitely something that is worth the gamble, and you just have to hope it pans out.
I hope so. I mean, coming back in December is going to be a huge deal for the Lions, and whether or not he gets that role, somebody else could ultimately cement that. But when we talk about a guy who's been in the system but never played except for Washington State, and I'm talking about Dahl, who is a second-year player who doesn't have any experience, even though playing in college seemed to be his forte. And, of course, you want to talk about being undersized. He was able to compensate for his athleticism. And, of course, you want to talk about guys like Kelvin Beachum, who was undersized in the left tackle position for the Steelers, now with the New York Jets, going through another team in previous years. I had Kelvin on the show when he was with the Steelers in 2015. But Dahl certainly brings the athleticism, the heart, the passion, the drive. I think he has the knowledge. I think it's an easy move over for him in order to get to that left tackle position. But at 6'4", at 305 pounds, is that going to be enough for him? And if so, is he the long-term answer for the Lions in that position on the offensive line?
I don't believe so. Really, with the size, I mean, it's really important to have that length at that position. If he's, it really, there's just a lot that depends on I mean, like, is he able to the best edge rushers around? And I mean, luckily he's not going up against too many world beaters up in the NFC North, every week. But like if he can hold his own from a speed aspect, and he can move his feet, he has the potential, even though he's undersized, to be okay. I mean, Kelvin Beachum. Last year he was recovering from a torn ACL, MCL, and he did okay. He was kind of a liability for the Jaguars, but his play in Pittsburgh, I think, was very positive before the injury. So there's definitely, it depends on how the philosophy of the Lions offensive line works. If he can get by, even though he lacks those measurables.
Well, they spent all season last year converting him over to playing in a left tackle position. So if they had done it effectively, if he was able to really adapt himself to playing that position, it could be the upside for him. It could be the upside for the blind side on Matthew Stafford, and hopefully will prevent any sacks. But of course, training camp is a proving ground for that, as well as preseason. I know things are vanilla there, but you look at it, you look at the season for the Detroit Lions. They were in the hunt. They've actually done better last year. I think I've seen them in any recent time. So, Patrick, out of time here on the show, tell everybody where they can find you, your great work, and what you do for Cover 32 Falcons.
Yeah, so I manage the Falcons site for Cover 32. We're about to release a bunch of fun things, game by game breakdowns, player breakdowns. We're going to talk about our division rivals. We're going to go back in history and look at the Falcons are about to open up a new stadium, maybe look at our old stadiums, uniforms, the cap health, all that kind of stuff. And also, I've been writing some national pieces for Cover 32, so look out for those. We're doing a doppelganger series about comparing football players to their doppelganger in a different sport. So I just wrote one on how Tyreek Hill and Billy Hamilton of the Cincinnati Reds are each other's doppelgangers. So I think we have a couple more coming out.
Wow, that's unique. When those are out, let me know. I want to read those. It sounds like a pretty good read.
I'll link them to you.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Hey, yeah. Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate your time. Everybody, go give him a follow. Cover 32. Patrick, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time today. And we'll have you on again as training camp precludes and heading into the regular season where they face off against the Bears. We can always talk about that pre and or post game if that sounds good to you.
I look forward to it.
Sounds great. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it. Lou, thanks for the call. I appreciate you hanging in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. This is Rudy Reyes of the Rude Dog Show. We touched everything we needed to. Lions, Steelers, Falcons, Bears, and Browns right here on the Rude Dog Show. An NFL kickoff, of course, that's going to go on for the remainder of the week. We're going to talk about the AFC North. I know, Tyler's what you're waiting for. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for that. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Rudy Reyes of the Rude Dog Show at WBLZSports.com. I will see you guys tomorrow.